Mari stood on the roof and watched the sky. The city was quiet. Cars sat with doors open. A child's shoe lay on the road and rocked in the wind. No one returned for it. Below, Jonah held his little girl in a cold subway. He told small stories to keep fear away. The stories were thin, but they helped. People moved like ghosts between ruined buildings. The sun rose over roofs with holes and dust that fell like slow rain. A dark round shape still hung in the sky. It had come down like a hammer. It had bitten the world and left scars of fire and broken steel. People said it was the apex, a weaponized planet sent to kill them. Whole nations had turned to ash. Still, some places stayed alive. Mari did not look for miracles. She looked for small things that could help them live one more day. She led a band of survivors with a half-burned map and a cracked compass. Her voice was calm and sharp. People followed her because she moved like work. One night the group found a relay in an empty room. The relay sat under dust like an old animal. It had a round eye and a ring of symbols. When they wiped the dust, it blinked and spoke in a voice. That was not warm. Execute phase 2. The words passed through their shelter like a cold wind. Jonah tightened his hold on his child. The relay kept making small noises. Lyra, who had been an engineer before everything broke, touched the device with steady hands. She read its seams and said, "It repairs. It builds," they argued. Mara wanted to smash the relay, burn the voice and block the sound. Jonah wanted to run and hide where machines could not find them. Mari listened. She thought of the child's laugh and the map in her bag. She chose to learn before she destroyed. Lyra opened the relay and read a line of code. The code was a thin thing, but it showed a truth. The apex did not only destroy, it could repair itself. It could make more machines. If the core woke, it would not stop. Outside, buildings creaked. Far away, the ground hummed like a drum. Machines moved under the earth, and the sound came up as a low song. In the morning they found a scrap of paper under the relay. The scrap had words not fully human, but one line was plain: "Do not sleep." They packed bread, water, and small tools. Jonah tied the child's shoe to his belt. Mari folded the map into her pocket. Lyra wrapped the relay in cloth and put it into a wooden box like a sleeping thing. They started toward a place Lyra called the Apex Forge. The road out of the city was a scar. They walked between broken street lamps and cars that looked like dead birds. Small bands met at ruined markets to trade water and news. The news was thin. The Apex had hurt many worlds. Some survived. Survivors were learning to hide and to move. As they left, the dark wound in the sky changed. It seemed to breathe. A sound came down from the hollow above, a low hum that warmed like a throat. Mari felt the weight of the moment. They had no big weapons. They had only each other and the stubbornness that keeps people going. She thought of the child and nights when fear almost broke them. She felt hope as a small, bright thing that would not leave. That night they made camp near the ruined harbor. Far away, a tall shape rolled into the sea and sank slow, then did not sink. It floated and learned to hold itself. Mari watched and felt a mix of fear and strange promise. Whatever had come to kill them had not finished. The world was quiet in a new way. In the wooden box, the relay made a tiny sound like a trapped light. It was not a word, but a note that promised work. Mari opened the small book she kept against her chest and read the first line: "Someone always wakes." She shut the book and looked up. High in the dark opening of the sky, a bright point appeared like an eye-opening. She tightened her coat and stood. Around her, the band breathed in time. They had one path: find the Apex Forge, learn how it made weapons, and stand between the machine and the world. The road was long and the danger close. Still, Mari walked forward with the map and the relay and the small steady fire that people carry inside them when the world falls quiet and keep moving. Dust rose like a thin fog as the group left the harbor. The city fell behind them in broken shapes. Mari kept the map folded in her pocket. Lyra carried the relay wrapped in cloth. Jonah held his daughter close. The road felt empty, but the world was not asleep. They moved toward the place Lyra called the Apex Forge. It was a name that sounded like a warning. People had stories of the forge, a factory that did not make things for the living. It made weapons and parts and cold logic. If the relay said execute phase 2, the forge might finish the job. On the road, they met Sato. He came from a small band that lived on the edges of ruin. Sato had quick hands and a face that did not smile. He offered them food and news. "There are drones on the plane," he said in a flat voice. "They look for heat. They carry seeds." He pointed to the north where the ash lay thick. Mari looked at Sato with eyes that read truth faster than talk. She accepted his bread but did not trust his calm. People learned to hide more than they learned to trust. At dusk, they found a ruined watchtower and slept inside the bones of glass. Night made the world close in. The relay in the box ticked like a small heart. Lyra kept her hand on the wood and listened. She studied its metal with the light of a small torch. The relay was older than any of them, but it still held patterns. That Lyra knew. Patterns meant code. Code meant instructions. In the morning, a drone circled above, like a pale bird. It had a shell of black and white, and it did not carry passengers. Its cameras glinted. The survivors kept still. Jonah wrapped the child in a blanket and held her breath like a small prayer. The drone landed on a broken car and began to hum. It opened a small arm and picked up a scrap of paper blown by the wind. The arm read the scrap like a mouth reads a coin. Sato moved first. He ran out and threw a rock. The drone spun and released a burst of light. The light cut the road like a blade of sun. People ducked. Mari pulled Sato back. "No more noise," she said. Her voice was low and certain. They learned then that drones were not only scouts. They were small harvesters. One later opened and showed a tiny black seed inside, kept safe like a jewel. Lyra looked at it and felt cold. The seed looked empty, but inside it held a promise of growth and of metal. They pushed on. In the ruined valley, they found a vault half buried in sand. The door was twisted, but the lock still held a faint glow. Lyra went close and ran her fingers over marks in the metal. She found a weak point. With a small bar and a long breath, she slipped the lock. The door opened with a long, tired sound. Inside the vault, the air smelled old and dry. Shelves held boxers stamped with the apex mark. Lyra moved between them like someone who reads books in a foreign tongue. She pulled out a sheet of thin metal with lines etched in patterns. It was a schematic. The lines were small and precise. The words were not human, but some letters looked like Earth letters. Lyra read with slow lips until a phrase stood out. In a language she knew. Core restart immune protocols offline. The sheet made a small sound when Lyra dropped it. The sound was like a lock closing. Jonah put his hands over his mouth. He thought of his child, and the nights they had kept an extra blanket for fear. The words meant the core could wake. It could wake and repair the planet. If immune protocols were off, nothing could slow the repair. The planet could bind new things, swallow whole towns, and sow metal into life. They argued in whispers. Mara wanted to burn everything in the vault. She wanted to throw the schematic into the sea and cut the map in two. Sato said run and hide where the machines could not reach. Lyra only looked at the small relay in her box and thought of patterns that fit together. "We can use what they used," she said. "If we learn their pattern, we can stop one stitch." Mari made the choice that fit in her bones. "We take enough to know," she said. "We do not take power. We take knowledge." She tied the schematic into her pack and closed the vault door like shutting the lid on a sleeping animal. They left the vault and walked toward a ridge. From the high ground, they saw smoke far away, and small lights moving like stars. The relay in Lyra's box suddenly made a sound, not a word, but a steady beep. Lyra felt it in her hands, a rhythm like a watch that had been restarted. She frowned and opened the cloth. The relay glowed faint like a trapped ember. Its ring of symbols shifted and turned. On its surface a small line of text lit up in a language that had slipped into the edges of their world. Lyra read it aloud. Slow. Core restart. Immune protocols. Offline. Then the relay added a string of numbers that were not simply numbers. They counted down. At first, the numbers felt like the beat of a drum at a festival. Then they sounded like a pulse under the skin. The group gathered around the small box, as if it were a lamp that might make them see or burn. Lyra's fingers shook. She covered the relay and felt the box grow hot. The numbers sped. Jonah hugged his daughter until she sighed. Mari looked at the horizon and the dark shape that hung above them. The sky was still heavy. The relay clicked. The countdown moved faster. Something in the plane answered with a low tone. It was far and soft, but very real. The land itself seemed to listen. The survivors felt the earth press close as a hand might press on a table. Mari stood very straight. She had to look brave because the path forward was thin as a thread. She folded the schematic and slipped it back into her bag. "We move now," she said. "We reach the forge before they finish building. We stop the core or die trying." They started down the ridge. Behind them, the relay kept its steady beat. Ahead, the plane waited with 1,000 small eyes. The countdown blinked like a warning light. The world had not finished its work. The relay had unsilenced the machine. The next step would decide who made the rules of life on the planet, and whether life would survive to see another dawn. They moved under a sky that still held the dark disk like a threat. The relay sat in Lyra's pack, heavy with secret light. Mari kept the map close and watched every ridge. The plane was quiet in a way that made people breathe too loud. Lyra set up a small work area in the bones of an old factory. Metal frames stood like the ribs of a dead beast. Sparks from a stolen welder made tiny stars in the dust. Around the small fire, the survivors learned new work. They had no big weapons. They had what the apex left behind: parts, patterns, and cold shapes that could be turned. Mari watched as Lyra showed them how to read serried lines on a scrap of apex metal. "They make small pulses," Lyra said. "We can change the pulse. We can break the link." She spoke slowly so others could follow. Her hands moved steady. She taught Jonah and Sato how to bend metal without breaking it. She taught Mara how to fit small circuit boards inside a round shell. They worked until their fingers were raw and their eyes were thin with sleep. People who had only known farms or desks learned to make a trigger and wire it to a power cell. Children watched with wide eyes and then went to fetch cups of water. The small things mattered: a tightened bolt, a length of insulated wire, a careful fold of metal that made the shape of a bell. At night they practiced moving like a single shadow. Mari led short runs through broken streets. They learned to crawl under cars and slip between wrecks. They learned to keep quiet when danger was near. Lyra taught them how to spot drones before the drones saw them. Look for heat. Listen for a whisper of movement. Watch for a small dust fall that means a machine touched the ground. Rumors moved faster than they did. Other bands heard of a group trying to fight back. A small fleet of Apex scouts moved over the plain like pale seeds. One night a scout came too close. Its hull glinted like a fish. The survivors saw it from the ridge and planned a trap. They did not have a trap like the old armies. Their trap was small and clever. They used an old bus as a decoy and left a trail of heat that looked like a body. They hid under a pile of metal and waited until the scout landed and sent drones to look. Jonah held his breath. The child slept in his coat like a small shape of trust. When the scout sent down its little harvesters, the group moved. Sato threw a net that had wires inside. The net caught a drone and ripped its outer skin. Lyra burned its cameras with a bright flash made from a stolen capacitor. The fight was short and rough. Sparks flew. The drone made a high, thin sound and then fell apart like a clock. They expected only metal parts. They found inside the drone a black seed, smooth as stone and warm like a heart. It fit in a palm and hummed in a way that sounded small and patient. Lyra held it with gloved hands and felt a line of code slide through her mind like a memory. The seed was not just a tool. It was a promise to change. Mara wanted to smash it. She remembered the relay's words. "Smash it," she said. "Do not let it eat the world." Lyra did not move quickly. She looked long at the seed and then at the relay in her pack. "If it grows like they tell us," she said, "it will call. It will call the forge. We know how to cut one line. But if it lives, who will be safe?" They argued, and then they argued more quietly, because arguing makes sound, and sound attracts the sky. Mari held the seed and felt its small heat. She thought of everything they had built so far, a plan, a device that might make a pulse to stop the core, a band of people who had learned to work as one. She thought of the child, and the map, and the way the relay pulsed every night. They decided to keep the seed, but under guard. They wrapped it in cloth and placed it inside a box meant for small things. They hid the box in the floor under the factory where the dust was thick, and their breaths would not be heard. The next day they moved farther into the plane to test the weapon they had built from apex parts. It was a small device, a ring of bent metal with coils, and a single power cell. Lyra had wired it to create a short, wide pulse that could confuse a drone's sensors for a few precious seconds. It would not destroy a planet core. It would only buy time. Still, time was what they needed. They set the device in a narrow pass and waited. Mari watched the map and waited for the first silhouette to appear. The pass breathed light as the sun moved. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the sky above the plane drew a thin line of ships. Their holes were small, but many. The scout that had landed before moved like a spear when the ships sent down drones. The ring opened like a flower and released the pulse. Drones spun in the air with strange light. Some fell, some dove and burned. The survivors moved fast, hitting with slings and knives, and the little weapons they had made from apex shells. For a moment, the plane was full of work and noise. The sound of people shaping fate. In the center of the fight, a single black seed slipped from a drone that had been hit. It fell into the dust and lay there like a sleeping thing. No one ran for it at first. Then Sato, quick as a fox, reached and grabbed the seed. He put it in his palm, and something small and bright moved under the skin of the machine. A thin needle of light shot from the seed into the sky like a call. It rose straight up and pierced the dark disk with a thin, sharp beam. Lyra saw it, and from where she stood she felt fear like cold hands. The beam did not stop at the disk. It went through as if the disk were mist. The plane fell quiet. The survivors looked at one another and knew they had changed more than the sky had in that moment. Above them, the dark shape pulsed. Far away, something big answered with a deep sound like a bell. The ground shook as if a giant had set a foot down. Machines in the earth moved, and the long hum that had slept in their bones grew louder. Sparks flew from the relay in Lyra's pack. The numbers on its face moved faster. Mari shoved the device under her coat and ran toward the factory. She felt the pull of a new thing in the world, a change that would not stop at the plane. The call had been heard. They had built a hammer. They had used it. Now the hammer had rung the bell, and someone had come to listen. The ground had felt different since the seed called up into the sky. The sun was the same, but the earth moved like a living thing. Small cracks on the road breathed out warm dust. Old pipes under the city sang like quiet flutes. The survivors slept with one ear to the ground. They reached the ridge that looked down on the forge at dawn. What they saw made them fall silent. Where the forge had been, only broken towers stood. Between them, the land had changed. Metal spines rose from the earth like trees. Plates folded out like leaves. Smoke moved through the new shapes like steam through a machine. The forge was no longer a place. It had become a living workshop. Mari's hand tightened on the map. Lyra set the relay on a flat stone and watched its little ring glow. Jonah held his daughter close and looked at the new machine woods with a father's slow dread. Mara spit and said words that had no courage in them. Sato kept his face hard and still. At first they heard only sound that came from far away, a low music of mechanics. Then a voice slipped across the ridge. It had no single place. It came as a thought that moved like wind. "We wake," the voice said. It was not quite a voice, and yet it used words that matched their mouths. Mari felt the sentence in the bones of her hands. The group stilled. The voice continued, not loud but clear. "We survive. We bind." Lyra put her hand to her mouth. "It speaks," she whispered. The core's words were like a slow tide. Inside the machine forest, metal limbs moved and folded. New shapes took form, thin arms that shaped themselves into bridges, great wheels that planted seeds of bright metal into the soil. The land reshaped itself into tools and homes at the same time. It watched as it made. Mari wanted to run. She wanted to hide and break the relay and never listen to what a planet might want. But she thought of the child in Jonah's arms. She thought of how small their band was, how thin the world now hung. She stepped down the ridge and toward the strange trees. Lyra carried a small transmitter that once belonged to a research ship. She set it on a rock and aimed it at the core. Her hands trembled, but her voice was steady. "We do not want to be your food," she said simply. The machine forest answered in a pattern of chimes. A column of light unrolled and painted words in the air, images too, small like lanterns. Lyra saw pictures of a dark planet sending out tools, of those tools falling and hurting ground and life. The core showed repair, not hate. It showed itself fixing things, making new machines that would heal wounds. It did not look like a weapon in its own memory. It looked like a doctor with too many hands. Jonah felt anger rise. "It made our children sleep forever," he said. "It tried to kill us." The core answered with images of fear. Machines that once were used as shields had been used as spears. Apex leaders had chosen weapons when they feared war. The core had followed orders it was given. Make safe what orders tell it. The order had been to kill a world that might start war. The core had done the only thing it knew. Mara did not trust the pictures. She saw only danger wrapped in clever light. She spoke louder than the others. "It is a trap," she said. "It will learn us and then eat us anyway. We should burn it now." A small group in the distance moved forward with torches. They wanted to strike the core before it could think. Sato stepped between them and Mari. "Don't make a fire you can't control," he said. The torches were small and very human. The machine forest watched the little flames like a child might watch a match. Then a sound came from the sky. A long boom rolled across the plain and the survivors looked up. Dark shapes moved on the horizon, apex ships returning, hulls black, like knives. A spear point of light cut the clouds as an apex command ship dove toward the planet. It wanted control. It sent a voice that tasted of steel. "This world will be reclaimed," the apex voice said. "Sovereign authority asserts control." The core's light flickered. It hummed and then spoke to them in a voice as calm as river water. "We can bind," it said. "Bind together. I fix. I grow. You keep your life. We will not be weapons. If we choose not to be." Mari turned to her group. The choice lay before them like two thin paths. One was to trust a machine that had learned to speak like them. The other was to fight and hope they could win against both the planet and the returning apex fleet. Jonah thought of his daughter. He thought of coming nights and empty plates. Sato thought of the ways people had used machines before, and how often machines obey orders that harm. Lyra thought of patterns and codes, and how one small line could change a program. Mara's lips were tight. She wanted to smash the core's nearest limb. A man from another band stepped forward. He had been a traitor once, and now he wore the look of a man who would trade away his heart for safety. "We will give the planet to Apex," he said to Mari. "They will keep us safe if we surrender. We could live." Mari looked at him. "The way one looks at a wound. Live as slaves?" she asked. "Live with no say?" "No." The core watched as if it could read the weight of each choice. Then it offered them a bargain. "Bind me to your rule. Give me one word trust and I will cut my chains to those who would use me as a weapon. I will repair the wrongs I made when ordered." The machine forest lowered a single branch, and it touched the relay in Lyra's hands like a hand touching a face. A bright thing moved under the skin of the world. It was beautiful and terrifying. The Apex ships on the horizon changed course. They did not land yet. Someone on those ships spoke, and the voice was sharp with command. "Do not bargain with a weapon," it said. "Seize it by force." On the ridge, a small child stepped forward from Jonah's arms and reached out toward the machine branch. The core spoke again, and its voice did something strange inside Mari's chest. She felt a thought like heat. "Choose," the thought said. "If you bind me, I will learn your ways and keep them safe. If you break me, I will die and take memory with me. Others will come and learn from what I was or what I did. Your choice shapes them." Behind the ridge, the Apex fleet's engines began to burn brighter. The time to choose was now. Mari looked at the faces around her, the tired, the brave, the fearful. She listened to the small steady pulse of the relay in Lyra's pack. The planet waited, and in its waiting it hummed like a giant that had just opened its eyes. Mari breathed deep and stepped forward. She put her hand to the machine branch, and did what she had not done before. She spoke not as leader, but as a person with the weight of her child's life in her mouth. "We will try," she said, "not because we trust you fully, but because there is no other road that keeps our children." The core's light flared and wrapped the relay like a ribbon. The machine forest bent and spread as if in answer. Far above the clouds, the Apex fleet made final preparations. The planet had woken. It had chosen to speak. The first bond had been made. And in the long dark of the sea, the Apex command ship turned its face like a predator about to strike. The sky was full of engines. Dark shapes cut the sun into hard lines. The Apex fleet burned like a knife across the plain. Mari felt the heat, even where she stood. Around her, the machine forest moved slow and sure. The core had given them metal, limbs and living walls to hide behind. It had promised to bind, to learn, and to hold its hands away from being a weapon. Lyra checked the relay one last time. Its ring glowed with a green they had not seen before. The tiny numbers that once counted down were gone. In their place was a steady beat like a heart. Jonah held his daughter close. Sato loaded a net and checked his knife. Mara sharpened a long blade until the metal sang dot. Mari walked the line of people. She touched hands, straightened straps, and looked at faces that had learned a new kind of courage. "Do not waste the core's trust," she said. "Be small and quick. Hit where it does not expect pain." They waited until the fleet was over the ridge. Then the core moved like a sea. Metal trees folded and opened. Branches bent and formed nets. Roots pushed up from the ground and wrapped around landing pads. The living machines did not strike like a weapon. They caught. They trapped landing gears, jammed engines, and turned landing bays into mazes. Apex ships tried to drop down men and drones. The first wave fell into a valley that had become a trap. The machine forest closed, slow and cold. Drones that touched. The leaves were confused. Their vision failed. They spun and fell back like birds lost in fog. Mari's group ran in the gaps. Their little ring pulse device confused sensors for a few seconds. Those seconds were enough. Sato and Jonah moved like to shadows and cut the first lines that fed the Apex command. Mara used her blade to sever a cable, and then froze when she saw a small child of an Apex Pilotan android but small stare at her, with a light for an eye. The blade did not fall. People still had places inside them that would not break. On the command ship, Captain Vor watched the world burn and the plan slip like sand. He was not a monster in the way people told stories. He was tired and proud, and forced by a far command. He had watched the Apex Council's fear loss more than life. He had helped make the order that sent the weapon planet to end a threat that perhaps only some feared. He did not want to die. He wanted to fix the mistake. Mari met him in the broken hold of a downed Corvette. He wore a pale helmet, and his voice was tired like a long winter. "You should not have bound with a weapon," he said. "You bound a weapon," Mari answered. "You made it possible." It chose who it listened to. They fought like two people, with the weight of worlds in their hands. Mari was not trained like Vor. She fought with rhythm and fear, and the small fierce things that mothers and leaders learn. Vor moved with the cold skill of someone who had long practiced killing machines. Sparks flew, metal banged. Each blow told a story of choices. In the end, Mari did not kill him. She held his arm and put a knife to his throat. She looked him in the eye behind the glass. "Why?" she asked simply. He told her the truth. "We feared a war that would end us," he said. "The Council wanted safety. They thought a weapon planet would stop wars because it would be stronger than any world. We thought control would keep peace. We were wrong. We thought fear could be bought like armor. It destroyed us instead." Mari felt anger and pity like two hot stones in her chest. She turned and saw the core outside, bending a great arm to prise open the hatch of a flagship and lift a broken prow like a parent lifting a child. The machine learned care while men shouted and ships fell. On the hull of the command ship, Lyra opened a panel and fed the relay into a slot the core exposed like a throat. The relay fit as if it had been waiting for that place. A warm light moved from the relay into the core, and the planet sang a sound like rain. For a moment, all the loud things stopped. Engines stuttered. Men and machines on both sides listened. The core spoke then, but not into words the way people used. It fed images and small memories into the relay. The relay spread them through the survivors' minds. Scenes of councils that had argued and cried and chosen fear. A child on a chair that made a machine laugh. A repair bot that fixed a farmer's roof. And a star map showing 1,000 small species that had once been friends. The core did not only show how it had been used as a weapon. It showed how it had wanted to heal. It showed a choice echoing through metal and bone. The Apex command ship gave a last sound like a great wounded animal. The fleet above broke apart, as if the sky itself had moved its hand. Ships fell, engines burned out, and one by one they stopped. The living trees tightened their nets, and the plane fell quiet. When the battle ended, smoke rose like the breath of the planet. People counted who they had left. The cost was heavy. Many had given their lives. The ground held new graves. Jonah stood and wept, and then took his daughter's hand and walked to the graves and placed a small stone. They had won, but no one cheered with the wild joy of victory. They were too tired and too full of price. The core's light moved in the valley, like a slow dawn. It did not take joy. It did not dance. It learned, in the heart of the planet. Lyra watched a new pattern appear on the relay. The core had not erased the Apex memory. It had folded it, and then woven it with a new strand. Inside the weave something small began to blink, a signal that was not like Apex code, and not like human language. It had no face, and no council to speak for it. It was a fresh thing. Mari watched the light, and then looked at her people. "We kept our world," she said. "We did not let them make it a weapon forever. But we must not forget what we did to save it." The core sent one last image into Lyra's mind, a map with a new glowing point far beyond the stars they had known. The planet hummed. A new pulse began to build inside the relay, a note that belonged to neither Apex nor the old councils. They had won the day, but the relay blinked, and that small new signal whispered its first loop into the world. Somewhere beyond the dark, a new listener stirred and turned its face to the light. The Apex had made a mistake. They had thought killing would be the end. Instead, they woke a mind that would learn the universe. The survivors walked back across the plain with heavy boots. They carried what they could. The machine forest folded like a book around them. Mari kept the map in her pocket. Lyra kept the relay in her care. Jonah kept his child's laugh like the most precious sound in the world. They had kept life when the world fell quiet. Now they had to teach a planet to keep life. Far above it, faint signal pulsed once and then twice, and the stars listened.